Will the highly anticipated trade for former Sacramento Kings center Jonas Valanciunas finally come to fruition today, as Mark Stein and other NBA insiders have predicted? What should be made of David Adelman's interesting comments during the broadcast of the Nuggets Summer League opener? And will Chris McFarland and the Colorado Avalanche have a tough decision to make about one of their newcomers in the very near future? All things to come on today's rundown, but we will begin in the NBA, where the still unconfirmed trade between the Sacramento Kings and the Denver Nuggets for Jonas Valanciunas in exchange for Dario Saric could finally come to fruition today. Veteran NBA reporter Mark Stein reported earlier this week that the expectation is for this trade between the two organizations to be confirmed and finalized as soon as the end of this week, which for most of us in the working world is today. Will that come to pass? And it seems like it might, if you listen to the words and read the words of new Nuggets head coach David Adelman during the Nuggets Summer League game, their opener against the Milwaukee Bucks, where they unfortunately lost at a buzzer-beating three-point shot. David Adelman was talked to and interviewed during the broadcast and had some interesting comments about that trade. He said, quote, when asked, I should say, about how he plans to use Jonas Valanciunas, he said, quote, point center. You can play combo guards. You don't need a lead point guard. You can play 5-out offense, play off the elbow, post him up. He's such a skilled player. It's funny. I think people forget that we, the Nuggets, had DeMarcus Cousins years back. And this will be the first time, I think, we have our backup with a similar skill set style to Nikola Jokic. Because DeMarcus was such a great player where he could load him up on the post, he could play on the perimeter. Jonas is the same, and he shoots the ball better than most people realize. So that's how I envision him. I think you have multiple combination guards. You can get away with that with a guy like that is that talented. So clearly, David Adelman, who was asked just about his thoughts about the Jonas Valanciunas trade and how he would use Valanciunas given the opportunity, was a pretty definitive answer and a clear indicator of the vision that Ben Tenzer, Jonathan Wallace, and David Adelman, the Nuggets as an organization, have for Jonas Valanciunas. He's speaking very matter-of-factly there in a sense that really shuts the door to my ears about whether or not they think Jonas Valanciunas will become a Denver Nugget. It's a matter of if, not when, this trade gets finalized and Jonas Valanciunas takes the court for the Denver Nuggets. So I find that a little bit intriguing because this whole thing has been up in the air. And as I noted with our guy Philip Lindsay on the drive earlier this week, I understand more greatly now the pull that a player like Jonas Valanciunas, who is from Lithuania, is in his early 30s, who has watched his career kind of swirl uncontrollably from being a competent contributor in a starting lineup to kind of a veteran backup role player type presence on a lot of bad teams, from the Washington Wizards to the Sacramento Kings to the New Orleans Pelicans, whatever cavalcade washing machine you want to look at in his career. After he left the Toronto Raptors, who were a title team the year he was traded, it really shows to me that I understand why a player like him in his situation is tempted by the allure of a team like Panathinaikos over in Greece, which is a basketball club that is loaded with NBA caliber names, former NBA names, and a genuine championship contender in the European Basketball League. But the way David Adelman spoke about Jonas Valanciunas, both with the definitiveness and the present tense nature of his comments and the clarity of the role that he clearly has mapped out diligently with Ben Tenzer and Jonathan Wallace as to how they want to use him, not just in relief of Nikola Jokic as the backup five, but alongside him as a point center and a primary distributor and ball handler to highlight some of the things he can do outside of the low post game with the basketball in his hands, and that he can shoot from beyond the arc at a degree that they need, frankly, from a lot of different players on the court, I feel more confident than ever that this trade, as soon as maybe the time we get off of this show right now, could be a Denver Nugget in the near future, and that trade will be finalized going forward. So, in summary, David Adelman's comments about Jonas Valanciunas during the NBA Summer League game between between the Milwaukee Bucks and the Denver Nuggets told me this. Jonas Valanciunas, despite the temptation and the genuine intrigue about playing overseas for Panathinaikos, is more likely than ever, in my opinion, to become a Denver Nugget in the very near future. He spoke about Valanciunas in such a definitive and clear way and had such a clear vision for his role that's been mapped out by this front office that it makes me think they maybe know something that we don't know, and that Valanciunas will indeed suit up for the Nuggets in the very near future. Another decision that's going to have to be made about a co-tenant of Ball Arena comes in the form of the Colorado Avalanche and the decision they may have to make about one of their players. It comes on the heels of a decision they made on Josh Manson, extending him for 2 more years, locking him under contract through the 2027-2028 season, actually getting him for less money than they're currently paying him. When the extension kicks in, he will only make just under $4 million, about $3.95 million, instead of the $4.5 million that he's on the books for. He was somebody that was talked about as a potential trade candidate alongside the likes of Samuel Girard, who they've been trying to trade for years, and he and Martin Necas, who is the subject of this conversation, because Martin Necas has 1 year left on his contract that they inherited from the Carolina Hurricanes during the Mikko Rantanen trade before Mikko made his way to Dallas. And he was supposed to be the focal point of the production that you were going to replace Necas with and help spread quality depth scoring throughout your lineup if you're the Avalanche, something that's plagued them since they no longer had Nazem Kadri and several members of the Cup-winning team that were so critical during that 2022 fever rush. So Necas, who could be due north of $10 million on the open market, has 1 year left on his deal, and the Avalanche could be tempted and maybe should consider trading him if they're not willing to pay him that kind of money, because running through this final season and letting the trade deadline pass, if they were to do that, would put the Avs in the exact same situation that they would have been in with Mikko Rantanen, who they dealt in January before the deadline. So you're getting into a familiar feeling, a little bit of a deja vu situation for Chris McFarland, except the player in question is Martin Necas and not Mikko Rantanen. And if they pay Martin Necas $10, $11 million, if that's what he ends up commanding, and they can't lock him in for a single-digit number like $9 million, then you're kind of saying you were willing to give Martin Necas the ballpark of the same amount of money that you would have had to pay Mikko, who was right in that $12 million range. So who would have been worth more? Mikko Rantanen at 12 or 12.5, or Martin Necas at 11, 11.5, 10.5 even million dollars? I understand it's a hard cap sport in hockey with the NHL, but the cap's going to be going up. Their TV revenue is projected to keep increasing as the sport gains more and more eyeballs. And it could put McFarland and company in a little bit of a sticky wicket perception-wise, no matter which way they choose. I'm in the camp that they didn't really have to give this extension to Josh Manson right now. It's a guy who came over during that cup run season and was a big part of that push. And since then has been kind of up and down due to nothing else other than injuries. He played just 28 games, if memory serves, in 2023 after they won the cup, the 2022-2023 season, and rebounded to play about 71 games and then played 48 games the year after. So it's really been a roller coaster of availability for Josh Manson. And locking him in at $4 million makes that contract a lot harder to trade. It's one thing if a team wants to sign him to their own deal and work out their own thing, and maybe it's close to that dollar amount, but $4 million already locked in for a couple of years isn't nearly as tradable of an asset. So it likely takes Manson off of the list, leaving Sammy G and Martin Necas as your only true real candidates for a trade if McFarland wants to tinker and maneuver with this roster in a way that is beyond the minimal amount of cap space they have left to pick up a couple of third-line wingers. They've been trying to trade Sammy G for 3 years, and it's not working because teams don't covet undersized defensemen. They definitely don't want to have more than one to have to deal with, and most teams probably have that slot filled. So Sammy G clearly doesn't have as big of a coveted interest on the open market. Josh Manson's now taken off that list. That leaves Martin Necas as your lone contributor if the Avs want to make a move. And I will say this. The way that Chris McFarland and company handle this Martin Necas question is going to say a lot, one, about their competency as a front office, and two, about the Avalanche's ability to continue to try to break that second-round threshold and be legitimate Stanley Cup contenders. Right now, they're in the top 4 or so by most experts in the desert and sports books out there in terms of odds to win the Stanley Cup. But the competition around them, especially in the West and within their own central division, is stiff. So I don't want to say it's a damned if you do, damned if you don't, because ultimately the production on the ice is what matters. But if they trade Martin Necas and try to spin the wheel again and hope that they can do the exact same thing they tried to do with the Mikko Rantanen trade with a different player, that's a big risk and a gamble for a team that doesn't have a huge window nor a large margin for error. And if they pay Martin Necas and the dollar amount is close to what you would have paid Mikko Rantanen, that's a tough optic as well, because then it's, why didn't you just keep a perennial 100-point scorer who is a cornerstone piece of your organization and one of the bigger success stories of the last decade? Regardless of how it pans out, and I have been someone who has raised my hand and stuck out my chest as a defender of Chris McFarland for some of the controversial moves that he has made, because I think I understood the logic, the rationale, and I think that even though there were mistakes made, those mistakes were covered up and or corrected by future moves, and then certain things that didn't pan out the right way weren't obviously handled well, but they also weren't in the cards originally. No one expected Mikko to go to Dallas after Carolina. So this decision that Chris McFarland makes will, in my opinion, say a lot about the Avs' competency and their ability to maintain contending status, and whether or not we may see more significant changes there in the near future. So many things to come. Broncos training camp just 10 days away. It is 7-Eleven day, so if you haven't gotten your Slurpee like I'm about to, go out there and get one on today of all days, and we will catch you again next Monday with a whole new batch of brand new sports news right here at Denver Sports 104.3 The Fan. Like and subscribe to our YouTube channel. Follow us on Instagram, Facebook, TikTok, wherever you need sports news, information, and entertainment. Denver Sports 104.3 The Fan has it there for you, right at your fingertips, 24/7, 365. We'll catch you Monday.